Hey everybody, Bob Babbitt here, another edition of Challenged Athletes Live, one of my favorite people on the planet. He lost his leg in Iraq and came back from that to go back to battle and lead his men as an amputee, and really one of the first soldiers to be able to do that. Colonel David Rozelle joins us. Colonel, how are you doing, David?
Hey, good afternoon, Bob. Good to see you. I'm doing great here in COVID hibernation in South Carolina, where it's nice and hot.
I love that. South Carolina. So, David, did you always feel like you wanted to go in the military? Was that just part of the plan?
Yeah, I think my father, when I was a kid, always talked about the mandatory service in Israel, and he always wished that America had the same thing for able-bodied males. And so I was kind of coerced, not to mention the family history. Everyone in my family served since the American Revolution. So it was kind of one of those things you kind of were born into. So, both through culturally, socially, and then, it did help pay for college too. I'm not going to lie. That was nice.
So you were deployed to Iraq in 2003. And how long were you there before the attack?
Yeah, that was the frustrating part. We found out we were going to war about 14 months before we got there. And that 14 months, and then the year and a half before that, we were out training the whole time. So I'd really been gone for 18 months out of 24 before we left. Then we went to war, and then I got injured at about the 3-month mark in Iraq, unfortunately. We'd done the invasion. We started to establish operations out in the western province of Iraq and started to do some great things. I was very proud of what we were doing, but there were some bad guys out there, and they got me with a landmine, and that was pretty unfortunate.
Well, and it's not like this was some random thing. They were targeting you. You were somebody they were looking to eliminate.
Yeah, I'd had a lot of success out there in the western province of getting money back into banks. Actually established a temporary city council and unelected people that I chose, and was getting the markets back open with fair trade. And I established some security forces. I started to pay people to patrol streets at night with us, and they targeted me. I remember going to a meeting one night, and all the sheiks were sitting around and yelling at each other. And I asked the guy that I was paying to be a translator, who was not assigned to me, just was some guy I had to trust. I said, "Hey, what's going on over there?" And they said, "Well, I don't think you should go on the patrol tonight. They're going to try to kill you." I said, "Oh, that's pretty interesting." And he goes, "Yeah, there's a bounty on your head." I said, "Oh, really? How much am I worth? That's interesting. I didn't know I had human value." And they said, $1,000. I said, "That's not enough. Tell them I'll give them $10,000 if they can try to kill me. Let's up that price. I'm worth more than $1,000. Come on, not a used car."
So June 21st, 2003, that's when your whole world changed. What do you remember from that?
Yeah, Bob, unfortunately, I remember every single graphic moment of it because it was such an intense moment that's imprinted on my mind. We had gone a route we were actually trying to teach some kind of like a minor police academy to get training and weapons to those guys that were helping us with security. And en route, we'd gone through a place that I had been screening at night with my tank. Screening means I was overwatching the city with thermals, and we were, we're shooting bad guys with our tanks that were moving weapons in and out of an area. And so the security missed the turn. I made the turn. We went across the field. I was almost to the other side. I told my driver to stop, and I looked around and said, "Wait a minute, this field's different than it was last time we were here." And I said, "You know what? We might be in a minefield, but we're so close to the road." So I called back on the radio and said, "Follow my tracks," which means make your tires go where I go. And I was in a light skinned Humvee with soft doors, rag top. I mean, it was wide open. And sure enough, just as I rolled over again, boom, a double stacked anti-tank mine blew off the front end of my vehicle. And unfortunately, my right foot at the time. And that was a day that changed everything. And I gave my last radio call, which was secure the perimeter and evacuate the casualties. And the casualty was me. I thought that was my last command in the Army.
And then you go home and you go through the rehab process. And there was a lot of a lot of downtime for you in terms of, you had Kim, and you're either a dad or gonna be a dad, but
Gonna
you
be it.
were gonna be a dad, but
Yeah.
obviously you were going through depression and you're dealing with medication. And talk a little bit about some of those low moments, because it was a struggle for you early on.
Yeah, I'm actually helping someone virtually go through recent amputation. I'm acting as a mentor, and I'm talking to their wife about the phases they'll go through. And there's this horrible period of time that you go through where you can't deal with the pain. That severed limb really causes some pain, especially for someone like me at the time. I felt like I was in the best shape of my life, and I was at war, and I felt like a hero. I felt like I was doing great things, and then there I was, 20 pounds lighter, 2 months later, not without a leg, and was setting my alarm so that I could take more opioids every 30 minutes to an hour, sometimes a little bit longer, but I could not deal with the pain. I absolutely could not deal with the pain. And in the process, had a problem, and was drinking heavily with medication that clearly has a label that says no alcohol. And that was, Bob, that was pretty low. When my wife says, "Hey, can you go check on a baby to make sure he's asleep or needs a blanket or whatever?" And I couldn't get up because I was too drunk or stoned to get up. And that's not living. I had to change my life.
There was a moment, because before you left Iraq, you were sending letters to Kim pretty regularly. And then there's a day where you would tip your crutches to go out to the mailbox. You go to the mailbox, and in that mailbox is a letter. Would have been the letter that Kim received if you had died in that crash, right? That would have been in that explosion. That would have been the final thing she would have received. How did that impact you, seeing that letter?
Yeah, Bob, the last time I told this story is when you and I were together in New York City, and I actually haven't thought about it since then. But truthfully, that was the moment for sure when I needed to start to change things, because I crutched out to the lawn. Excuse me, I crutched out to the post box, which in the neighborhood you had to go out to from the house. And I remember on the way to the post box, there were little kids that were making fun of me on the way, because kids are mean, and they were making the one-legged guy going to the post box and was sweating and struggling on the way. And then I opened the letter from myself to Kim, which would have been the last letter I ever wrote. And obviously that was a very, very powerful feeling for me to see the words that would have been Kim's last memory of me. And it was like a lightning struck me. And I said, all right, it's time to turn it around. I'm alive. I need to make something good out of something bad that's happened. Stop feeling sorry for myself, get myself straight, and get myself back in action. So, and that's when it all began. It was right then.
I remember one of the first times we chatted, it was you were starting to do little sprint triathlons. And
Yeah.
then I tossed out the big one. Hey, you've done a sprint. Why don't we do an Ironman?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually, when I was out in, because I was in Colorado Springs at the time, and I'd done what's called a midwinter tri, which was literally in Colorado. You can't really schedule a road bike before about June because you might end up with 3 inches of snow on the ground, even in the spring. So they do what's called a midwinter chill, and there was snow on the ground. So it was an indoor swim, it was outdoor mountain bike, which I fell twice on, and then like a 2-mile trail run right downtown. And as I crossed the finish line, I felt so slow and so disabled. And it was such a horrible feeling, but I had made that transition, right? I had made the transition from being that guy that's stoned and drunk on the couch to actually doing something, getting off my butt and making something out of it. And it tied to the rehab. You can swim first, and then you can bike, and then you can run. Someone at the gym had actually said, hey, come do this triathlon with me. And I'll tell you, Bob, I was hooked. I borrowed like somebody's, what I thought was a really nice bike, like a $400 Giant. And I had some mountain biking shoes that I used. And so I started doing a a circuit of the Colorado Springs, the sprint tries that summer. And it was, it was before I even met you guys. Right. And then, so then I got out to San Diego and I swam 1.2 miles in the ocean and hung out with Robin Williams for the day. And you taught me into doing an Ironman. And then my life really changed at that point.
So when you start turning your life around, and before that, had you thought, I want to go back and lead my men in battle? Or was that part of this metamorphosis so that, okay, I need a goal. My goal is I'm going to get back to Iraq and lead my men again, this time with a prosthetic leg?
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, Bob, because I've sort of channeled into different streams throughout my recovery, right? That was always a given, right? So when I had a great leader, a guy named Colonel Dave Teeples back in the regiment, who came and saw me in the hospital after I had my leg amputated in a tent on the Baghdad International Airport with wild mortars came in and were splashing around the tent. So that was my first surgery. And when I woke up from that, I was actually in the bed next to one of the prisoners of war that I'd captured and had been shot. And there he was in the bed laying next to me, handcuffed to the bed. And then, obviously I threw a fit about that, but then my boss came to see me, Colonel Dave Teeples, and had great vision and said, all right, man, I want you to get home. I want you to recover because I got to get you back in the fight. Let's get you back into another troop. As soon as you recover and you tell me you're ready, I'll get you back into a cavalry troop. And I thought to myself, does this man not see that I lost a leg in combat? And but that was his motivation, right? He wanted to make sure I had a goal in mind. So, all the other stuff that, I've done with you and other folks has been one stream, but then the military, that was always a given. I was just mentally, as soon as I recovered, was going to get back into a cavalry troop, start leading again, and then get back and fight because I now had a little vendetta to pay back. So I was not done.
And you got back within a year, right? Within a year of losing your leg?
Yeah, I know. Within about 6 months, I was, I got my first leg, and I was back in command of a rear detachment, if you will. So the guys that were in the back that were taking care of supply and sending stuff forward and taking care of replacements and all that. And then I transitioned when the regiment got back into a formal command, and then as soon as they got off the boat, we started preparing to go back. There were some soldiers of mine that weren't back for 9 months before we went back to Iraq for Operation Iraqi Freedom 3. And I was on that mission. I was on the advanced party to go. I was so excited. And I had no idea what history I was going to make in doing that. I just wanted to go and kind of like Sarah Reinerson doing Ironman the second time. Right. I got taken out, on the bike, if you will. But by God, I was back from unfinished business over there. And it was great. I mean, I felt super powerful. I did feel a little handicapped over there sometimes. In fact, I think the story, but there was one time I was on a mission and we were out in the city and I'd flown in on a helicopter and, I'd looked around, I hit the ground, my team came up in Bradleys and tanks to support me. They all hit the ground and we started patrolling through the town and I actually had a foot break. There was something that happened, like climbing over a wall or something. My foot broke and I could feel it in my boot. And there, during this time, it was like the old West. Everyone's hiding behind the doors and looking through the peeps in the glass. And I actually stopped, took an extra foot out of my backpack, unscrewed one foot, put it on, put the other foot back in my backpack, started marching again. And then I looked at, and there were 1,000 people watching, going, "He's a robot! He's a robot! Look at this guy! These U.S. soldiers can just replace their feet when they're injured." I mean, I'm sure I'm a legend in Iraq right now still, in the Western provinces out there. So yeah, I was back. I mean, I was not afraid. I was ready to go. It was fun. So I got to do the first recon for the Battle of Talafar, which was awesome. We had a great time. Being a scout was fun.
So when you finished Ironman, and I remember being there when you went 1246 in Kona, and it was important to you because you knew your men would be watching, right? They'd be watching the show. They'd be watching you do what you do. And you wanted to look good, right? You wanted to look powerful because that was important to you. I remember you sort of stopping, maybe a quarter mile from the finish, a couple hundred yards from the finish, sponging off, making sure that you looked like, hey, this was a walk in a park. This wasn't a big deal. And then you came across that finish line saluting, basically saying, I'm back and I'm good to go.
Yeah, I have to admit, and it's been long enough, Paul Thomas rode up on his bike to give me some sponges so I could fix my hair and get the sweat off my face. I want to look good for the pictures. And then as soon as I came around on K Boulevard there, it started pouring down rain. Remember that?
I do.
So she had just had birth with Jackson a few months prior, and Kim tried to hand me the newborn baby. And I remember looking at her, and you could see it on TV where I'm like, no, don't give me a baby. I was trying to envision running across the finish line holding a baby after, Ironman. So I pushed the baby, which I'll never live down. She's probably in there right now mad about it. But then coming across the finish, I mean, people have done some amazing things. I've seen people do backflips, front flips, the ALS roll for Blazeman. I mean, everybody does cool stuff, but I thought it was my signature to salute those that could not cross that finish line, and proudly to be the first, honestly, first back in combat, and then the first to do Ironman. And then, and I'm nothing against Carlos Maleta, who's my hero, but, to be able to run across the finish line there really was the most emotional thing I had done through my recovery. And it really did symbolize my recovery. When I got back to Walter Reed, I'll never forget, it was General Cody, a 4-star general, said to me, okay, Dave, we got it. You're recovered. You don't have to do anything else to prove yourself. So, that was it. I had done it, and I was very proud of that. And it seems like a long time ago, but I guess it really wasn't that long ago.
So Operation Rebound, you were the first military person who was part of Operation Rebound. Nico Marcolongo and you basically worked together to create this. What was the need? What did you see as a need for a program under CAF that would take care of our troops?
Well, when I was introduced to you and to Oz and Jeff and the gang, I absolutely saw the passion of people that wanted to take care of people with disabilities and get them back on their feet again. And the model that you guys created is out of the world. Challenge Athletes Foundation is so unique in what they do. And I recognize that because I've been working with a bunch of organizations at the time that were not above board like you guys were, for sure. And I was super impressed with all the spokespeople and everyone involved, from the volunteers to the fundraisers to the staff. I was in love with the organization, and it was I was trying to figure out how we could take care of the veteran population. And I felt like so many people were just going to use the veterans to raise money. And it's not about that. Obviously nonprofit organization, it's kind of an important step in it because you got to have money to give money. But your model made sense for what we needed, because the VA does come short sometimes on what folks need, and they don't provide opportunity. And that's the thing that was missing tremendously at that time, was the opportunity. And it could be anything. It could be you want to go be an Olympic ping pong player, or you want to do a 5K in your neighborhood, or like for me, to do an Ironman. So when you and I started talking about Ironman being a reality and launching Operation Rebound as part of it, it made perfect sense. The timing just matched up, because what better way to send to your stakeholders that, okay, hey, we're going to invest in these veterans, and hey, look what they can do, right? I mean, that award-winning NBC program really was amazing, and it told the story well. And you and I both watched it a number of times, both together and apart, and it brings tears to my eyes every time. So for sure, what I did had an impact. And to launch Operation Rebound, set the standard for the rest of the guys to follow my lead. I mean, that's what we do in the Army, right? We set the standard for our soldiers to follow. And I am so happy that so many guys have just blown me away. I mean, my 1245 I'm super proud of, but man, you got Joe Cap and other guys that just, made me look like I was standing still. So I'm super proud of that. Everyone keeps saying, aren't you going to go back and try to beat some of those younger guys' times? I said, no, I'm so happy they beat me. You know what I mean?
So what is when you look back, favorite CAF moment?
Well, I mean, I mentioned him before, but you know, the number of times that I got to go on, you know, 100-mile rides with Robin Williams, and the way he interacted with troops, and then the way that he spent time with me and others individually, whether it was my little friend Jonah when we gave him his 2 running legs that first time, and then we all got to spend the afternoon on the beach together. I mean, you know, it's really hard to narrow down, but, you know, if you really were to hold me down to it, it would be probably the back-to-back century from San Francisco up to Santa Rosa with Robin, because it was about a year before he passed, and that was one of the most special days I've ever had, was just seeing him as a person, and then everybody on that ride was someone I knew from before, right? I mean, there was barely anybody new on that ride. It was all the MDC folks that I knew, SDTC folks I knew, all the staff from CAF were around, and it was my 40th birthday, if you remember. Yep. And that was probably my favorite moment. But it's hard to say, you know.
That's a great.
It really is hard to say.
Hey, David, thank you so much for taking so much time. It's always we got to get together in person when this craziness is over. It's been way too long.
Oh, I talked to Nico the other day. I'm on the way out. I gotta come see you guys. I gotta go surfing or something. I gotta get out of South Carolina for a little while. So
I love
maybe
it.
A bike ride. Maybe you and I can rent some beach cruisers and do 100 miles.
You got it, baby. Colonel David Rozelle has been our guest again, Challenged Athletes Live. Thanks everybody for tuning in. David, you are the best. Thank you, buddy.